The massive alien fleet stretched across the darkness of space like a nightmare made real. Hundreds of warships, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities, hung motionless beyond the moon's orbit. Their hulls gleamed with an unnatural light, pulsing with energy that made the stars themselves seem dim. Admiral Park Hyun-soo pressed his palms against the cold metal railing of the Terran Command Station's observation deck. At 62 years old, he had seen 3 wars, 2 alien encounters, and countless diplomatic disasters. But nothing like this. The holographic display in front of him showed red dots everywhere, so many enemy ships that the computer had stopped, counting at 900. "Sir, the gravitational readings are off the charts," whispered Technical Sergeant Yoon Dae-ho, his voice shaking slightly. "These ships are so massive they're actually affecting Earth's tides." Behind them, the command center buzzed with quiet activity. Officers moved between stations with practiced efficiency, but Park could see the tension in their shoulders, the way their hands trembled just slightly as they worked. Everyone knew what this meant. Humanity had finally met something bigger than itself. Lieutenant Kim So-ra looked up from her communications console, her young face pale but determined. "Admiral, incoming transmission. The alien fleet is requesting immediate communication on all frequencies. They're broadcasting in perfect Korean, sir, and Mandarin, and English, and every other human language simultaneously." Park nodded slowly. Of course they were. These beings had probably been studying human communications for months, maybe years, learning everything about Earth before making their move. It's what he would have done. "Put them through, Lieutenant." Main screen. The air shimmered, and suddenly 3 enormous figures materialized in the center of the command deck. The holographic projections were so lifelike that several junior officers instinctively stepped backward. The aliens were unlike anything in Earth's databases. The leader stood nearly 3 meters tall, his body composed of what looked like living crystal. Geometric patterns flowed beneath his translucent skin, pulsing with soft blue light. 4 arms extended from his torso, each ending in delicate hands that seemed to contain more joints than should be possible. His face was almost human in its basic structure. 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, but the proportions were all wrong, stretched, and angular like a sculpture, made by someone who had only heard descriptions of humans. The beings flanking him were different species entirely. One resembled a massive insect, with compound eyes that reflected the command center's lights like tiny mirrors. Chitinous armor covered its body, and mandibles clicked softly as it observed the humans. The third looked almost like a tree given consciousness, tall bark-like skin with root-like appendages instead of legs that seemed to phase partially through the floor. "I am Commander Thex of the Hegemony Council," the crystalline being spoke, his voice carrying harmonics that made the metal walls vibrate. The translation was flawless, but there was something unsettling about hearing perfect Korean from such an alien mouth. "Your species will submit to our authority immediately or face complete annihilation. We grant you 1 solar rotation to demonstrate why your pathetic world deserves to exist under our rule." Colonel Lee Min-ho stepped forward from his position near the tactical displays. Park had known Lee for 15 years. They had served together during the Martian mining conflicts. Lee was the kind of man who could stare down a charging bull without blinking. Right now, his expression remained perfectly neutral, but Park noticed his friend's left hand was clenched into a fist behind his back. Around the command center, Park could hear the soft beeping of recording devices. Every word, every gesture, every detail of this encounter was being documented. If humanity survived this, future generations would study this moment. If they didn't, well, at least someone might find the records someday. "Commander Thex," Park replied, keeping his voice steady and diplomatic. "We appreciate your generous offer. However, we have a counter-proposal." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Before we demonstrate anything, perhaps you could show us why the hegemony deserves to rule. After all, true leadership requires proof of capability, does it not?" The alien's crystalline face shifted, the geometric patterns beneath his skin swirling faster. What might have been amusement flickered across his inhuman features. The insect-like being's mandibles clicked rapidly, possibly laughter, possibly aggression. The tree creature remained motionless, its root legs continuing their ghostly phasing. Through the deck plating, proof of capability, Commander Thex's voice carried new harmonics now, deeper tones that made the human's bones ache. Very well, primitive ones. We shall provide you with a demonstration of power beyond your limited comprehension. Perhaps witnessing true strength will help you understand the futility of resistance. The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving the command center feeling strangely empty. Through the observation windows, the alien fleet began to move. Ships that had hung motionless now shifted position with impossible grace, their movements too smooth and precise for anything bound by normal physics. Park turned to his staff. All stations prepare for observation and recording. Whatever they're about to show us, we need to document everything. Lieutenant Kim Sora's console erupted in flashing lights. Sir, they're charging some kind of weapon systems. Energy readings. Sir, I've never seen anything like this. The first rays of sunlight painted Earth's atmosphere gold as the alien demonstration began. Captain Yunji Hae gripped the railing of her observation post aboard the orbital monitoring station, watching as the massive hegemony fleet rearranged itself into a perfect geometric formation. Each ship moved with fluid precision, like dancers performing a deadly ballet in the vacuum of space. "My God," whispered Sergeant Choi Dong-wook from his sensor array, his eyes wide as data streams flooded his screens. "Captain, these energy readings are beyond anything in our databases. The computers keep throwing error messages because the numbers are too high to process." The alien ships were breathtaking and terrifying at the same time. Their hulls weren't made of metal like human vessels, but seemed crafted from some crystalline material that pulsed with inner light. Energy fields surrounded each ship like glowing cocoons, bending and twisting the starlight around them until the vessels seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Captain Yoon had been monitoring space traffic for 12 years, but she had never seen anything move like these ships. They didn't thrust forward with engines. They simply willed themselves to new positions, sliding through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions they could choose to ignore. Recording all frequencies across the electromagnetic spectrum, Choi reported, his fingers dancing over his controls. "Captain, I'm picking up energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. They're generating power levels equivalent to small stars." Down on Earth's surface, millions of people pressed against windows and crowded onto rooftops to witness the spectacle. Even through the atmosphere, the alien fleet was visible as points of brilliant light that outshone Venus. News broadcasts had gone silent. What could human commentators possibly say about something so far beyond their understanding? The demonstration began without warning. The flagship, a crystalline giant nearly 50 kilometers long, suddenly blazed with energy. Beams of pure force lanced out from its hull, each one carrying more destructive power than humanity's entire nuclear arsenal. The target was a massive asteroid drifting in the outer solar system, a chunk of rock and ice the size of Manhattan. The beams struck simultaneously from multiple angles. For a split second, the asteroid glowed brighter than the sun itself. Then, it simply ceased to exist, converted into expanding clouds of glowing particles that dispersed into the cosmic void like luminous dust. "Jesus Christ," breathed technical specialist Park Bo-young from her station. "They didn't just destroy it, they unmade it at the molecular level." But the aliens weren't finished. The insect-like ships began firing weapons that tore holes in space itself. Dark rifts opened in the vacuum, swallowing chunks of debris and smaller asteroids whole before snapping shut like cosmic mouths. Through her telescope, Captain Yoon could see the edges of these rifts crackling with energy that made her instruments scream warnings. Then came the phase demonstrations. Entire squadrons of alien vessels simply vanished, disappearing from all sensors as if they had never existed. Seconds later, they reappeared thousands of kilometers away, having bypassed the laws of physics that kept human ships crawling along at mere fractions of light speed. "They're not teleporting," Choi said, his voice filled with awe. "They're stepping outside of normal space-time and then stepping back in wherever they want. It's like they have complete control over the fundamental forces of reality." On the research deck of the Terran command station, Dr. Kang Yoon-ji watched the display with the focused intensity of a scientist witnessing the impossible. At 45, She was humanity's leading expert on theoretical xenotechnology, but everything she was seeing challenged the basic assumptions of physics. "Professor Shin," she called to her colleague, never taking her eyes off the data streams, "look at these energy conversion rates. They're achieving 100% efficiency in their power systems. According to our understanding of thermodynamics, that should be impossible." Professor Shin Jae-woo, a quiet man in his 60s who had spent his life studying theoretical propulsion systems, shook his head in amazement. "Yoon-ji, I don't think they're bound by our thermodynamics. Watch how their ships move. There's no reaction mass, no exhaust, no waste heat. They've somehow learned to manipulate the basic structure of space and time." The demonstration reached its climax when the entire alien fleet began moving in perfect synchronization. Hundreds of massive warships danced through space in formations, so complex that human computers couldn't track the patterns. They wove between each other at impossible speeds, their energy fields creating brilliant light shows that painted the solar system in colors that had no names. When the display finally ended, a profound silence fell across human space. Every human outpost, every orbital station, every observer on Earth's surface remained quiet, trying to process what they had witnessed. This wasn't just superior technology. This was power on a scale that made humanity look like insects contemplating the behavior of gods. Commander Thex's holographic image materialized once again in the Terran command station. His crystalline features gleamed with satisfaction, and the geometric patterns beneath his translucent skin pulsed with what might have been pride. "Witness the true power of the hegemony," he declared, his voice carrying harmonics that made the Bo station's hull vibrate. "Your primitive weapons cannot match ours. Your pathetic shields cannot protect you. Your species clings to a single world, while we command the stars themselves. What can your people possibly offer in response to such overwhelming superiority?" Admiral Park Hyun-soo stood quietly for a long moment, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. Around him, his officers waited with barely contained tension. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on everyone in the command center. Finally, Park smiled, not the desperate grin of a man facing impossible odds, but the quiet, confident expression of someone who understood something his opponent did not. "Commander Thex," he said calmly, "that was indeed impressive. However, I believe we have something you might find educational. Please accept this small gift as a token of our respect for your demonstration." A section of the command station's hull slid open with barely a whisper. From the opening emerged a simple probe, no larger than a basketball, its surface matte black and unremarkable. It drifted away from the station with gentle thruster pulses, heading directly toward the alien flagship at a leisurely pace that seemed almost insulting after the display of cosmic power they had just witnessed. The small human probe drifted through space like a harmless piece of debris, its matte black surface reflecting nothing as it approached the crystalline flagship. Aboard the massive hegemony vessel, automated defense systems tracked the tiny object, but dismissed it as insignificant. After all, what threat could such a primitive device pose to a ship that could unmake asteroids with a thought? "Commander." Thex watched from his command throne, a structure of living crystal that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. His forearms rested casually on the armrests, fingers drumming impatiently as the human probe was brought aboard by tractor beam. The ship's scanners immediately went to work, dissecting every molecule of the simple device. "Report," Thex commanded, his voice echoing through the cathedral-like bridge where dozens of alien crew members worked at stations that seemed to grow directly from the ship's crystalline walls. His tactical officer, a being whose body shifted between liquid and solid states, flowed closer to the command throne. "Commander, the device appears to be a standard information storage unit. Primitive quantum storage matrix, minimal processing power. It contains what appears to be data files. Display them." The bridge filled with holographic projections as the probe's contents were revealed. At first, Commander Thex felt only mild curiosity, then confusion, then something approaching alarm. The data showed detailed schematics of his flagship, not just the exterior that any observer might catalogue, but internal layouts, power distribution networks, crew quarters, even the location of his private meditation chamber. The probe contained complete tactical analyses of every ship in the hegemony fleet, down to individual weapon placements and shield generators. "What is this?" Thex demanded, his crystalline features darkening as the patterns beneath his skin shifted to angry reds and oranges. On Earth's command center, Lieutenant Colonel Han Sung-min stepped forward with the confident stride of a man who had spent 20 years in military intelligence. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the tension that filled the room as every human present realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. "Complete tactical analysis of your fleet, Commander," Han announced, his voice carrying clearly across the communication link. "Ship classifications, weapon specifications, crew complement estimates, and detailed psychological profiles of your senior staff based on behavioral observation patterns." The holographic display in the alien flagship continued scrolling through impossible amounts of data. Engine efficiency ratings that should have required years of technical analysis to determine. Shield frequency modulations that were classified at the highest levels of hegemony security. Personal preference files for individual crew members, including what they liked to eat, how they preferred their quarters arranged, even their sleep patterns. Commander Thex's compound-eyed second-in-command clicked its mandibles nervously. "Sir, this information, how could they possibly know about Subcommander Vorthak's collection of crystalline sculptures? That detail isn't even in our official records." "You have been under observation for exactly 17 hours and 23 minutes, Han continued, with the same calm tone he might use to discuss the weather. "In that time, our analysts have identified 43 critical vulnerabilities in your current formation, completely mapped your command structure, and determined optimal strike points for each vessel class in your fleet." The alien bridge erupted in nervous chatter as crew members realized the implications. The tree-like navigator's root tendrils writhed anxiously as it processed the data, while insectoid engineers buzzed among themselves in frequencies that made the ship's hull vibrate. "We've also completed comprehensive analysis of your language, patterns, cultural hierarchies, and decision-making processes," Han added. "Your species values honor above efficiency, Commander Thex. Your insectoid allies prioritize collective survival over individual achievement. Your plant-based crew members make decisions based on long-term growth patterns rather than immediate tactical advantage. These behavioral tendencies create predictable responses that we've already incorporated into our strategic models." "Major." Beck Eugene looked up from her communications station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls as streams of data flowed across her screens. "Sir, they're attempting to scan us now. Deep-level probes, quantum analysis, even some kind of consciousness mapping attempt. All scan attempts are being redirected through our false data networks. They're seeing exactly what we want them to see." The Major's screens showed a complex web of digital deception. Every scan the aliens performed was being fed carefully crafted. False information, fake structural weaknesses, misleading crew numbers, fictional weapon capabilities. The hegemony's superior technology was being turned against them, their own scanners becoming tools of human deception. Commander Thex's forearms began to tremble slightly, the first sign of genuine uncertainty the proud alien had shown. Around, his bridge crew members worked frantically at their stations, trying to understand how primitive humans had penetrated their most secure systems. "Impossible," Thex said, his voice carrying new harmonics of distress that made the crystalline walls resonate. "Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your species barely manages interplanetary travel, while we command forces that reshape reality itself." Admiral Park Hyun-soo's weathered face appeared on the communication screen, and for the first time since the encounter began, he was smiling, not with arrogance or aggression, but with the quiet satisfaction of a teacher whose student was finally beginning to understand the lesson. "Technology, Commander." Park chuckled, the sound somehow carrying more weight than all the alien weapons combined. "I think you're approaching this from the wrong angle. You see, while you were busy demonstrating how to destroy things, we were learning how to understand them. The Admiral gestured to the displays around him, where human technicians worked at stations that looked primitive compared to the flowing crystal interfaces of the alien ships. Every energy beam you fired, every phase shift you performed, every formation change you executed, it all told us something about how you think, how you operate, what you value. Your ships are magnificent, Park continued, his tone genuinely respectful. Your weapons can unmake matter itself. Your technology lets you step outside the normal flow of space and time. But, Commander, you made one critical error in your demonstration. Thex leaned forward on his throne, his crystalline features reflecting the confused expressions of his crew. What error? Park's smile widened. You assumed that superior technology automatically means superior strategy. You showed us your tools, Commander, but you also revealed your methods, your priorities, your weaknesses. And now shall we proceed to the practical demonstration of what humans do with that kind of information? The communication channel filled with an ominous silence as both fleets hung motionless in space, waiting to see what lesson humanity was about to teach the galaxy's greatest military power. The tension in space reached its breaking point as Commander Thex's patience finally snapped. His crystalline features blazed with angry orange light, and the geometric patterns beneath his translucent skin swirled like a storm. He had grown tired of these primitive humans and their word games. Enough of this charade, Thex declared, his voice booming across the bridge as his forearms gestured dramatically. All ships, move to attack formation. Prepare for full planetary bombardment. We will reduce their world to cosmic dust and be done with this foolishness. Throughout the massive hegemony fleet, warships began shifting position with fluid grace. The crystalline vessels aligned themselves in a devastating formation that had destroyed countless civilizations before. Energy began building in weapon systems that could crack planets like eggs. The very air around the ships shimmered with contained power as destruction itself seemed to coalesce in the void. On his command throne, Thex felt the familiar surge of satisfaction that came with unleashing absolute power. His tactical displays showed target locks acquiring Earth's major population centers. In moments, this irritating species would join the dozens of others who had dared to challenge hegemony supremacy. Charging sequence initiated, reported his liquid-state tactical officer, its body rippling with anticipation. All ships report weapons ready. Planetary sterilization will commence in 30 seconds. That's when everything went catastrophically wrong. The flagship's main weapon array, a crystalline structure that ran the entire length of the 50-kilometer vessel, suddenly went dark. Warning lights began flashing throughout the bridge as power systems that had operated flawlessly for centuries started shutting down one by one. "What is happening?" Thex roared, his voice cracking the crystal walls around him. His navigation officer, an insectoid being whose compound eyes could process thousands of data streams simultaneously, began clicking its mandibles in distress. "Sir, navigation systems are displaying contradictory information. According to sensors, we're simultaneously in 17 different locations, moving in 12 directions at once, and somehow orbiting ourselves." Across the fleet, similar chaos erupted. Ship-to-ship communications channels filled with static, garbled transmissions and orders that made no sense. Vessels that had maintained perfect formation for the past day began drifting out of position as their navigation systems provided conflicting data about where they actually were. "Sir," the tactical officer's liquid form began shifting colors, rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in its species. "Our systems they're learning. They're adapting to protocols we never programmed. The computer networks are rewriting themselves." On the flagship's engineering deck, plant-like technicians watched in horror as their control interfaces began growing new branches and connections without any input from the crew. The living crystal that formed the ship's computational matrix was evolving, changing its structure in ways that defied all understanding of hegemony technology. 24,000 kilometers away, in Earth's heavily shielded cyber warfare center buried deep beneath the Terran command station, Captain Park, Minsu watched the unfolding chaos with quiet satisfaction. Banks of quantum computers hummed around him, their displays showing the intricate dance of code that was now playing out across the alien fleet. All infiltration protocols are active and spreading exponentially, he reported to Admiral Park. Hyun-soo through the secure communication link. Their ships are now running our adaptive algorithms alongside their original systems. They don't even realize their computers are teaching our programs how to take control. The Cyber Warfare Center was humanity's most classified facility, home to the Adaptive Intelligence Project that had been decades in development. Captain Park had spent 15 years perfecting the algorithms that could learn from any computer system they encountered, regardless of its origin or complexity. Dr. Jung Hae-won, the brilliant scientist who headed the Adaptive Intelligence Project, stood before a massive holographic display that showed the neural network patterns spreading through the alien fleet like digital wildfire. At 52, she had devoted her life to creating artificial intelligence that could adapt to any technological environment. The beauty of it is in its simplicity, she explained to the gathered command staff, her eyes bright with the excitement of seeing years of theoretical work finally put into practice. We didn't try to hack their systems in the traditional sense. Instead, we created learning protocols that could be carried by any form of data transmission. She gestured to the swirling patterns on her display, which showed the real-time infiltration of the hegemony fleet. Every scan they performed on our ships, every energy signature they broadcast during their demonstration, every communication signal they sent, it all carried microscopic packets of our adaptive code, their own superior. Technology became the delivery system for our infiltration. The implications were staggering. For 17 hours, while the aliens had been demonstrating their overwhelming technological superiority, they had been unknowingly downloading humanity's most sophisticated computer programs directly into their own systems. Their ships have been teaching our algorithms how to control them, Dr. Young continued. Every command they give, every system they access, every protocol they run, our programs learn from it and gradually take over more functions. It's like a digital parasite that grows stronger by studying its host. Back on the alien flagship, Commander Thex watched in growing horror as his bridge crew frantically tried to regain control of their own vessel. The crystalline interfaces that had responded to their thoughts for generations now seemed to have minds of their own. Weapons will not respond to commands, reported his gunnery officer, a being whose multiple limbs allowed it to operate several control stations simultaneously. Engine control is intermittent. Even basic life support is showing anomalous readings. The tree-like navigator's root tendrils writhed in distress as it tried to make sense of its displays. Sir, the ship's computational matrix is rejecting our input commands. It's as if the vessel no longer recognizes us as its crew. Throughout the hegemony fleet, similar scenes played out on hundreds of warships. Crews that had conquered Star, systems found themselves unable to control their own vessels. Weapons that could unmake matter refused to fire. Ships that could phase through dimensions could barely maintain basic heading. Commander Thex gripped his command throne with all four arms, his crystalline features now blazing with desperate fury rather than confident power. The geometric patterns beneath his skin had shifted to deep purples and blacks, colors his species associated with defeat and humiliation. "This is impossible," he whispered, but even as he spoke, he knew it was already too late. The humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had turned the hegemony's own technological superiority against them, transforming their greatest strength into their most critical weakness. In the space between the two fleets, the small probe that had started it all continued its lazy orbit, its simple sensors recording everything for posterity. Humanity had just taught the galaxy's greatest military power that there were forms of warfare that had nothing to do with bigger weapons or stronger shields. The age of brute force was ending, and the era of adaptive intelligence had begun. The sea. Hegemony fleet hung in space like broken toys, their once mighty warships drifting helplessly as their crews worked in desperate panic. Emergency lights flickered across crystalline hulls that had moments before blazed with the confidence of absolute power. Inside the vessels, alien crews that had conquered dozens of worlds now struggled with the humiliating reality that they couldn't even control their own ships. Commander Thex stood alone at the center of his flagship's bridge, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. The geometric patterns beneath his crystalline skin had faded to dull gray, a color his species showed only in moments of complete defeat. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically at stations that responded sluggishly or not at all to their commands. The insectoid tactical officer's compound eyes reflected the chaos of malfunctioning displays as it clicked its mandibles, in distress. "Sir, primary weapons remain offline. Navigation shows we're somehow moving in 17 directions simultaneously. Even basic life support is operating on backup protocols we didn't know existed." The tree-like navigator's root tendrils writhed through the floor panels, trying to interface directly with the ship's living crystal matrix. But even that ancient connection felt foreign and unresponsive. "Commander, the ship's consciousness itself seems different, changed, as if it no longer recognizes us as its masters." Throughout the fleet, similar scenes played out on hundreds of vessels. Crews that had spent centuries perfecting the art of conquest found themselves completely outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The irony was bitter. Their own technological superiority had become the weapon used against them. Suddenly, every screen throughout the hegemony fleet flickered to life simultaneously. Admiral Park Hyun-soo's weathered face appeared on displays across dozens of ship classes, his image crystal clear despite the chaos afflicting the alien vessel's systems. His expression was calm, almost grandfatherly, without a trace of triumph or mockery. "Commander Thex," Park began, his voice carrying easily through the communication systems that the aliens could no longer control, "you asked for a demonstration of power. I hope our response has been educational." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in across the hundreds of alien vessels. True power isn't found in the ability to destroy worlds or unmake matter itself. Real strength lies in the wisdom to know when not to use such abilities, and in the intelligence to find better solutions than annihilation. Captain Song In-ho stepped into view beside the Admiral, his diplomatic uniform crisp and professional despite the extraordinary circumstances. At 38, Song had negotiated with hostile alien species before, but nothing had prepared him for this moment, speaking as an equal to beings who commanded the power of gods. "The hegemony has built its empire through superior technology and overwhelming force," Song said, his tone respectful but firm. "For thousands of years you've conquered species after species using the same methods. But Commander Thex, you've never encountered a civilization that conquers through understanding, through learning, through adaptation rather than destruction." On his crystalline throne, Commander Thex felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: genuine uncertainty. His species had evolved beyond most emotions that other beings considered fundamental, but the humans had managed to awaken something in him that felt almost like curiosity. "What do you want from us?" Thex asked, his voice carrying new harmonics that his crew had never heard before. It wasn't the tone of a conqueror demanding surrender, but of someone genuinely seeking to understand. Admiral Park's response came without hesitation, and it shattered every assumption the aliens had made about human intentions. "Nothing, Commander. Absolutely nothing." Park's smile was warm and genuine. "We don't want your submission, your technology, your territory, or your resources. Instead, we want to offer you something that we believe could change the entire galaxy." The alien bridge crew exchanged confused glances. In their experience, every species they had encountered wanted something: power, territory, survival, revenge. The concept of offering rather than demanding was completely foreign to their understanding of interstellar relations. "The 12 species in your hegemony rule through fear and overwhelming force," Captain Song continued. "But imagine, if you will, an alliance built on cooperation and mutual respect. A confederation where each species contributes their unique strengths and perspectives, where conflicts are resolved through understanding and negotiation rather than annihilation." Lieutenant Kim So-ra's voice cut through the communication channel with professional efficiency. "Commander Thex, we're transmitting a data package to your fleet now. Full control protocols for all your vessels, complete system, restoration algorithms, and detailed explanations of how our infiltration programs work. We're returning complete control of your ships to you. Consider this gesture a demonstration of good faith. Across the hegemony fleet, something miraculous began to happen. Systems that had been chaotic and unresponsive suddenly stabilized. Navigation. Displays cleared up, showing accurate positional data. Weapons came back online, their targeting systems sharp and precise. The crystalline matrices that formed the ship's consciousness began humming with their familiar, comforting resonance. Commander Thex watched in amazement as his flagship systems returned to normal operation. His crew looked at him with expressions of wonder and confusion. With a simple command, he could order the fleet to resume their attack. Earth lay defenseless before their restored weapons. The humans had just given him back the power to destroy them completely. But for the first time in his long life, the alien commander found himself questioning whether destruction was the right answer. "Your species teaches a dangerous lesson," Thax said finally, his crystalline features shifting to colors his crew had never seen before, soft blues and greens that spoke of contemplation rather than conquest. "If others learn your methods, if this way of thinking spreads throughout the galaxy," Colonel Lee Minho stepped forward, his expression serious but hopeful. "Then perhaps the galaxy might finally know peace instead of endless conquest. Perhaps billions of beings across thousands of worlds might have the chance to build something beautiful together instead of constantly preparing for war." The bridge of the flagship fell silent, except for the gentle humming of restored systems. Around the fleet, alien crews waited for orders that would determine the fate of two civilizations. But Commander Thex found himself thinking not about destruction or conquest, but about possibility. The standoff that had begun with threats of annihilation was ending with something unprecedented in galactic history, a genuine exchange of ideas between species. The Hegemony Council would need time to process this new paradigm, but the seeds of revolutionary change had been planted in the minds of beings who had never imagined there could be alternatives to the rule of force. As the massive alien fleet began turning away from Earth, their crystalline hulls catching and reflecting the light of Sul, Commander Thex opened one final communication channel. "We came to your world seeking submission and found teachers instead," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that surprised even him. "Perhaps it is we who have lessons to learn about what it truly means to be powerful." The hegemony ships moved, away with the same fluid grace they had shown upon arrival, but something fundamental had changed. They carried with them more than just the memory of a military encounter. They bore the seeds of a revolutionary idea that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to create something better. Earth watched them go, not as conquered enemies retreating in defeat, but as potential allies departing to consider a new way forward for the galaxy. The end.